Thank you. And now, via Zoom, we have Amy Watson as her divinity. She is a leadership coach based in Columbus, Ohio. She's also a master certified coach in theology and frontline management. She helps leaders find balance between empathy and accountability. And in her spare time, she loves to garden and says she has way too many cats. So I'm going to open it up to Amy for an easy yes. Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much, Stacy. Can I get a little bit of feedback, making sure you can hear me okay? If
We
anyone
can hear you perfectly.
Good. Thank you. Well, good morning, Oaklandon. I am so honored to be back, to be able to speak to you. I am honored by the invitation and just appreciate you all so much. Yesterday, our country turned 250, so seems to me like this makes today a good day for us to think about what we stand for. And since a few months ago I started transcribing my mother's diaries, this has been on my mind anyway. I was tackling the diaries project because I wanted the reference data from my family's life and from my own. I wanted to be able to search to find out if we had the address for my brother's house in 1988 or how long it took me to pay off my first car. The ephemeral details that the internet has taught us should be easy to find. And, well, I knew that Mom's diary had almost all of it. But I will be honest with you, I really expected to be bored. My mother was no philosopher. She didn't reflect on her inner life or wrestle with big questions on the page. She recorded the weather. She made note of what she cooked for supper. She reported in the same flat tone a trip to the grocery store and a trip to the emergency room. So I thought I was going to find this really boring. I did not expect to experience a sense of longing. The expectations that came with being a woman of her generation make me so happy that we are past that. But I have longed for something in her experience. There was something in the way that she lived that I think might have been more common then, but that we've lost now, or that I've lost at least. I'm going to try to show you what I mean, but first, I need to tell you a little bit about what I think we've replaced it with. First off, I've noticed three primary habits in our contemporary world when it comes to giving, or at least three attitudes. So, the first giving attitude is saying yes because we feel like we have to. It's a compulsion that's followed by resentment. Maybe the request came from someone that we're not willing to disappoint, or maybe we say yes just because we don't know how to say no. So the resentment stews in us, zapping our energy over time. The second giving habit is a practice of saying yes, like it's a skill we're acquiring from scratch. Shonda Rhimes spent a year in the practice of saying yes. Jim Carrey made a hilarious movie out of this kind of practice, and I found them both inspiring. At the other end of the spectrum, I'm hearing and connecting to a third giving habit or attitude, which is a negation habit that comes from having said yes with resentment too much. And I'm seeing it in places that really surprise me, like our newest young professionals entering the workforce, negotiating for work-life balance before they've worked a single day. This, honestly, is the one that I think I might fall into the most myself, at least in this season of my life. So we say yes out of obligation and then resent those we've said yes to, or we practice saying yes because saying no has made our lives too small, or we say no as if the world is just full of takers and we're just trying to survive. So this was my context as I read my mother's diaries. But I found that mom seemed to live in a fourth place. Well, mom and dad. My parents didn't need a year of saying yes, they just did. For instance, mom drove to a woman's house to deliver a typewriter ribbon and then drove back again to install it because she realized the woman wasn't going to be able to do it herself. My father came across some women struggling with a leaf blower on a walk, and he spent the afternoon fixing their leaf blower. He debugged printers for the Senior Adult Association and the local arts guild, volunteering for organizations that just needed someone who knew what they were doing and would show up. The two of them prepared food for grieving neighbors and gave folks a ride just because it was needed. They didn't crow about it, they just did it, and mom recorded it because that's what was in her day. So I'm going to share with you a portion of her diary to help illustrate how this came into the foreground for me. It's going to be our reading for today, but I do need to prepare you for how she wrote because that is a subject in itself. Mom didn't write essays. She had a high school education from the early 20th century, but the writer I'm most reminded of when I read her diaries is Hemingway. She gives equal weight to everything, just the facts, no interiority, no drama. So when her tone changes even slightly, you do feel it. So I'm going to start by reading just a few cherry-picked days selected from a few weeks in her life. I want to acknowledge up front that she uses a lot of names, but all you really need to know is that almost all of the names are family members. The only two that she mentions in these entries who are not family members are Louise and Paul. They were lay leaders at the Greystone Baptist Church in Asheboro, North Carolina, which was the church where mom worked as a secretary. Now, mom's writing goes from mundane to tragic to comic and back to mundane with all of the finesse of a poorly trained getaway driver. It's just her writing style. So be warned. Finally, I'm sharing many but not all of the details that she recorded, but the plot thread for you to follow in these entries is the story of how old choir robes in one church became new choir robes in another. And it all starts with this unassuming note on Friday, April 14th, 1989. Mostly sunny. I walked to work today and enjoyed it. I was at work alone. Louise brought a letter by for me to type and copy to be sent out concerning choir robes. Tuesday, July 11th. Mostly sunny, hot and humid, 93 degrees. I worked at Greystone Church this morning, made a tape for June, and wrote to Lily and Norman. I sent them an old Greystone Baptist Church directory that had colored pictures of the choir robes. Bob started a basic computer class at RCC. He got confused on the time and let them out at 11 instead of 12. I bought groceries, then made a peach cobbler. The top burnt. Made spaghetti for supper. Friday, July 14th. Partly sunny, not as hot, 87 degrees. I worked at Greystone Baptist this morning, finished the bulletins, then wrote my round robin letter. I also wrote to Lily and Norman. I had called them about the choir robes at Greystone and told them they could buy all 30 robes for $400 if they want them. Bob went to Lexington to meet with a woman at the Senior Adults Association about their computer. Bob and I ate lunch at Hardee's. Thursday, July 20th. Partly sunny, rain this evening, 83 degrees. I worked at Greystone. I called Louise to tell her my sister's church would buy the choir robes and we would take them up this weekend. I made the bulletins. Bob taught his computer class. I canned 6.5 quarts of tomatoes. Bob and I helped Paul and Louise load the choir robes in our trunk. Bob and I went to Walmart, bought 8 packs of Charmin, 88 cents each. Filled the car with gas. Lily and Norman called. We told them we'd bring the robes tomorrow. Friday, July 21st. Mostly cloudy, heavy rain at times. Bob and I got up at 5 a.m. for Illinois. We ate breakfast at Bonker's restaurant, left before 6:30. I drove a lot. Arrived at June's in Heron about 6:15 p.m. Their kids were here visiting from Texas. We all went to DeSoto and ate supper at Lily and Norman's. After supper, we took the choir robes to their church. Bob and I are staying at June's. Sunday, July 23rd. Partly cloudy, one rain shower. We went to church in DeSoto at First Baptist. The choir used the robes from Greystone. They looked so pretty. I took pictures of them. Afterward, we did a little sightseeing. We saw a terrible 3-car accident. A 16-year-old girl thought she caused it and was hysterical. We ate watermelon at Lily's. Monday, July 24th. Mostly sunny, 91 degrees. Bob and I got up at 5 a.m. and left June's at 5:18. Stopped at the Pancake House in Heron. I helped with the driving. Stopped in Knoxville at the Cracker Barrel at noon. It was a pitiful meal. The dumplings reminded me of the dough bait we used to use for fishing. Bob's dinner was awful too. Arrived home at 6 p.m. Amy had been home and left a message. Tuesday, July 25th. Mostly sunny and hot, 87 degrees. I worked at Greystone. I wrote to Lily and Norman with a bill for the choir robes. Bob taught a computer class. So I think I'm going to stop there, except for this one little note on Tuesday, August 8th. I received a beautiful flower arrangement from the choir robe committee and a beautiful thank you card. So, what did we just hear? What I hear in this passage is that saying yes was native to her. It strikes me as a healthy yes because she didn't resent anyone afterwards. In fact, through her diary, she did record times when she would draw and clarify a boundary if she felt something needed to change. Otherwise, all of her work and activity were just aligned with something that she valued. So it makes me ask, what was that thing she valued? With that question in mind, what stands out to me is that the Illinois choir used the robes from Greystone. They looked so pretty. That's it. That's the whole accounting. 10 weeks of logistics, the letter, the church directory, the phone calls, a trunk loaded in the rain, 10 hours of driving, a delivery. And what she recorded, the only moment in the entire sequence where her tone changes at all, is that the robes looked pretty. She did not write, "We worked so hard for this," or "I'm glad they appreciate it," or even "it was worth it." Just the robes looked pretty. I don't think she was performing humility there. This is a woman who recorded every birthday card she received. She recorded the thank you note and the flowers. But I believe that she genuinely experienced that moment at face value, separate from any effort, separate from any accounting of what it cost her or what she received in return. I think that's a clue. What she valued wasn't the giving, but the outcome, the robes in use. The choir transformed. This small, beautiful thing that existed in the world now because she had become aware of a need and moved towards it. That isn't boundarylessness or compulsion, and it isn't a habit you have to practice. It's a living value, an identity. It's clear in the diaries that if someone asked for too much of mom and dad, they would follow through, they would meet the need, and then they would clarify what they were willing and unwilling to do going forward. She wrote this down too. I believe our boundaries tell us who we are and who we aren't. In mom and dad's case, I see people who lived beyond the act of boundary setting. And I wonder if that isn't what we've lost. Boundaries are so important to have and communicate and defend. But somewhere in learning to protect ourselves, we've also made self-protection the whole project. The conversation we've been having culturally around boundaries, protecting ourselves, saying no, that's a good conversation. It's important. I work with a lot of my coaching clients on clarifying, setting, communicating, and defending boundaries. And my mother's generation undoubtedly paid real costs that I don't want to romanticize. Exhaustion and resentment happened. I'm just wondering if this conversation about boundaries doesn't have a shadow side. When self-protection becomes our organizing principle, when the primary question that we bring to every request is about what will this cost me, then I think we've replaced one problem with another. Rather than freedom, have we found a different kind of rigidity? But I also think it's complicated. As I've been reflecting on this question, I think that maybe what I'm longing for when I read her diaries is the presence of something larger than limits. In mom's case, she had a clear enough sense of what she valued that the question of yes or no answered itself most of the time. She knew who she was, she knew what she valued, and that made the decisions easy. But of course, her world was different from ours. The needs were visible, the relationships were local and long. Question of where to show up was clearer. We tend to keep our needs pretty invisible. Our relationships are often with people in other cities or other states. We connect through screens and platforms. Our lives don't overlap like they did then. And if we have gifts to give, we may be eking out a living by selling our gifts, unable to afford giving them away freely. So the question of where and how to show up just isn't as clear. Nonetheless, I'm intrigued, maybe even inspired. Maybe that clarity isn't just a generational inheritance that we've lost. Maybe there's a way we can know and understand ourselves. Something grounded in our values and who we are that makes otherwise extraordinary effort worth it. So I'm going to close where Mom's story about the robes closed. 2 weeks after the choir in Illinois wore their new robes for the first time, Mom recorded that she received a beautiful flower arrangement from the choir robe committee and a beautiful thank you card. That's it. No words of pride or sacrifice, just the flowers and the card and everything else that happened on that ordinary day, including the weather. She received their gratitude the same way she made the effort. One more thing that happened in a life that was oriented towards people. I don't know what your version of the choir robes might be, the thing that you can see that clearly needs doing and that you have some capacity to do, but that nobody's requiring of you. Maybe it's something at work or in the congregation or in your neighborhood. Maybe it's something that you've talked yourself out of because you aren't sure it's your responsibility. Or maybe you're not seeing the needs at all. Am I telling you that you should do it? I'm not. You know what is and is not in your capacity, what is and is not aligned with your values. And far be it from me to tell you to stop protecting yourself. I'm just offering up the question. Do you know what you value so strongly that the question answers itself? Because if you do, and maybe you do, then maybe the decision isn't really about boundaries at all. Maybe it's just about who you've decided to be. This kind of clarity sometimes changes what people do in the world. And so I invite you to go now into your ordinary days. Notice what moves you and what you would want to do without being asked. Notice what you do easily without fanfare because it's simply in you to do it. And if you find yourself standing at the edge of an easy yes, one that costs you something but doesn't cost you yourself, consider it might not be an obligation at all. It might just be who you are. Maybe you know what you stand for clearly enough that the decisions make themselves. May you give from that knowing and receive gratitude the same way, easily, without drama, as one more good thing that happened in a life oriented towards others. Blessed be. May it be so. Amen.